to The Truth in This Art, your source for conversations that explore the intersections of arts, culture, and community. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I am thrilled to be joined by my next guest, an extraordinary guest who is a musician, recording artist, producer, and an arranger. They are a Baltimore native and a DMV-based performer, widely known as the TrapCellist. Please welcome Chanel Kelly. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, very, very sparse, right to the point, because I think it's important, right? As I start off with this sort of first question to, one, how are you?
I'm having a pretty good day so far. I love that we're able to, honestly, I'm enjoying that this is remote right now. I've been taking a lot of trips recently, so this is working out very well.
I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit as well as we go further into the conversation. It's good to hear that you're enjoying the day thus far. And as we're recording this, the temperatures have gone into the deep freeze in the Baltimore, the DMV, that sort of region. And at least it's not raining currently. I don't like the rain. Not a big fan of the rain.
Yeah. Today is really nice outside. This is actually, I think it's been raining like pouring for the past few days, and today the sun is out. The weather is actually kind of nice. So I'm really happy. It's a perfect day to do a podcast.
You get it. For me, every day is a perfect day to do a podcast. But in that, I gave the sparse intro, but I always make it relatively sparse to give the guests the opportunity to introduce themselves in their own words. So I find like there are details that are always omitted, that are always sort of like short shrifted at times. Like, you'll find out, hey, man, my music is important, but also, I boxed for a little bit. It's like, oh, this is a detail that's not there. So if you will, could you introduce yourself? And in that, how'd you get started in music?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did a very good job of introducing me in the musical capacity that I perform as. I go by TrapCellist, and I perform on acoustic and electric cello. I also do string arrangements, and I produce music, I compose music, I do studio work, and so I think you did a great job of touching all those points. And you had another question. Could you remind me of that?
So, and I guess I'll frame it in this way, sort of, how did you get started in music? Not necessarily in playing per se, but, is there an experience that sticks out, growing up, an early experience with music or performance that kind of gave you that nudge of maybe I could do this, maybe I'm interested in this?
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, there was like this exploratory music class when I was in third grade. And basically, in that grade, I believe we were just learning about all of these different instruments. And I was fascinated by the bass drum. The music teacher, she did this presentation where she started banging on the bass drum, and she started very soft, and she had the candle in front of the bass drum, and it just got heavier and heavier as she would continue to bang on the bass drum until she hit like a forte note, and then the candle blew out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta play the bass drum. And from that point forward, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be drums for me. At the time, I didn't know that was called, being a percussionist. But had I ended up playing the bass drum, I would have been a percussionist. But my mom made it clear that I wasn't going to be banging drums in the house. So I had to pick a different instrument. Apparently, I had to be convinced because there was nothing else that I was interested in playing. But I was introduced to some string instruments. And from there, I ended up choosing the cello. I thought the violin and viola just weren't my speed. I thought they were just really tiny. I thought the double bass was absolutely just too big. Like, I couldn't even imagine carrying that thing around. And I thought the cello was a good fit. It was, I really enjoyed the C string on the instrument. I actually have it back here to my day. That's my favorite note. I've always been in love with the C string on the cello. It's my favorite note on the instrument. And I think that's kind of what helped me fall in love with cello.
Thank you. That's great because, like again, like I said earlier before we got started, when the guest cooks, I get two questions knocked out in one. So, you're helping me. You're making me seem like a better interviewer than I am. And I'm thinking as I saw you in person a couple months ago, in Anacostia, and so. When you mention the size sort of the instruments, like when you think of sort of the violin, you think of the sort of the other extreme of the double bass. Like when I think of double bass, I always think of like Charles Mingus, and I'm I'm 6'4", so I'm like, I'll play that. So how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
Yeah, that makes sense now. That makes sense. That's good. Yeah.
I'm not particularly tall, but I'm taller than most of the people that I meet. So a lot of people think that I'm tall, but I don't need, I'm not even the tallest in my family. So.
And so having that context, it does make sense, like having something like sort of right in the middle in terms of sort of those extremes in that size range. I want to move into this next sort of intro question. And this one is a little bit of a weird one. It almost feels like it fits into my rapid fire questions, but I think it's a good one to insert in the beginning. So I read that musicians often name their instruments, like B.B. King has, Lucille, and even Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, has cello named Petunia. Does your cello have a name?
Yes, my cello's name is Lady Godiva. I love, I really appreciate the morals and values of Lady Godiva. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her history. But pretty much, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Lady Godiva was married to a man who was he was taxing his people real heavy, and she felt as though like it's ridiculous for you to be taxing the townspeople like this. The taxes are way too high; they can't afford anything. And he was just like, I don't care, I'm taxing them. And basically, she was like, well, how about this? How about I ride around the street naked, and then you have to lower the taxes? Like that's the kind of deal we're gonna do here. Right. And yeah, she did it, and she was able to lower the taxes for her people. Her husband kept his promise, and he lowered the taxes, and she was able to. I respect her boldness. Yeah. And I also love that she has something that she stands for. So I loved the idea of naming my instrument after Lady Godiva because I resonate with the values that she stands for.
Okay, I was waiting for that connection. There was a boldness, a standing on business-ish of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that.
Thank you for that. So I want to talk a bit about experience in training. Like I remarked on it. This is year 16 of me being in the podcast space, and you're trumping me a little bit. You got 2 decades of musical experience. So if you will, could you talk a bit about that experience and sort of some of the formal training, some of the avant-garde techniques? Just talk a bit about, some of the training that you have from a formal standpoint, and then some of the reps over the years of just, really realizing who you are as a performer and a musician and arranger and because you have so many.
Absolutely. It's they kind of all roll into one, which is nice. But basically, I've been doing music ever since I was a kid. I started playing cello when I was in elementary school. I never received any formal training though until I was 16 years old. Prior to that, I was just playing in school orchestras. However, I think I had something to me because I was always a part of like honors orchestra and honors soloists and performing for things that you got to kind of stand out for. And eventually I got training because I never intended on being a musician. Um, I thought I was going to be like an interpreter or a veterinarian. Um, but it turned out that I was going to go to college for music. And so I got a private instructor probably about the end of my junior or sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year of college. That's when I started private instruction and actually had a tutor for cello for the first time. And from there, I was prepared to pretty much getting prepared to audition for colleges and things like that. And I was on the fast track from there. That was a crazy process, having to learn a whole bunch of classical cello repertoire that most kids start learning when they're children. And I'm just learning them at 16 years old. So I'm being thrust into this new environment that I've never been a part of before. Going from elementary school teaching to collegiate level teaching. Right. So yeah, fortunately, I got into University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. Shout out to my private instructor, Gita Ladd. She's absolutely amazing. And her and also my previous private instructor, Fiona Thompson, they were instrumental in me being a part of that music program there. And I'm really grateful that I was able to go to UMBC. It was there that I was able to get private instruction from a professional cellist, Gita Ladd, and also get private instruction on the avant-garde music techniques as well, which was very exciting. There was a program there called New Music Ensemble, and it was completely elective for me to be a part of that. But I've classical music is cool and all, but it's not like the end all be all. I need to be able to expand in whatever it is I'm doing. And so the New Music Ensemble, it's pretty much an ensemble where you explore music that normal people wouldn't listen to, is the best way I could explain it. It's not contemporary music like R&B and Bruno Mars, Beyonce and stuff like that. It's not that. New music represents, let's say I start walking down the street with some plates in my hand and I start throwing plates on the concrete. No rhythmic pattern to it whatsoever. You could call that new music if you want. If you record it and you can notate it on paper, then it's new music. It's crazy. It don't make sense. But that's where I started learning avant-garde technique. I learned how to do really incredible techniques on my instrument that no one would ever think to do. And so I learned how to do really exciting things like create bell tones on my instrument by weaving glass rods in between strings. I learned how to do seagulling, which is a technique to make your cello sound like a bird. I learned all kinds of fun things. And so it really expanded what I could do as a musician and how I can express my emotions and my feelings on cello. I'm doing my best not to be long-winded with that, but
no, it's great. It's great. It again, it answered the follow-up question. So again, letting folks cook, and I'm hearing, there's almost a alchemic element to it. Kind of like you're messing around, you're figuring out things, you're getting the techniques, but it's an experimental piece that goes along with it. And I wanted to throw a joke out there, almost like I can see it now. You just dropping those plates. I'm like, yeah, I'm snapping my finger to that. Yeah, I'm picking that rhythm up because I don't have any rhythm. I'm rhythmless. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
It's the height. It's just in the way most of the time. People think it's an advantage. It's just in the way. Sometimes I wish to be a short king.
It's funny because I feel like I live in this middle place where it's very uncomfortable because things are either too short or they can be too tall. So it's an interesting place to be 5'10". But if I put my heels on, everything is fine. It's like it all evens back out.
I hear you. I like it. So I'm going to go back to this one question because I touched on it a little bit, but I want to skip ahead to this question I have about practice. And and part of this is my own like ignorance, like in terms of watching certain movies. Everything that a lot of stuff that I talk about has a pop culture reference or connection. And when I think of musicians practicing, I'm always thinking of Gilliam from Mo Better Blues. And I think of that as sort of the practicing setup, and even how I approach what I do. I'm like, I got to put the time here to do this regularly. So could you speak a bit about like your cadence in practicing and arranging and playing music? Like, what does that process look like for you? Are you, picking up the instrument every day? Is it, 4 to 5 hours every day? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Playing cello 4 to 5 hours a day is absolutely insane. I don't recommend it for anybody. It's, but I'm honestly, I would consider myself a lazy cellist. I've never been interested in practicing. I always had to be told to practice my instrument, and even now, I've I do spend time learning music. I
Sure.
learn music, and once I learn it, like I already know in my mind what I want it to sound like. And because I know how to use my instrument, I know how to get the sound that I'm looking for. So I take time to learn music that I need to learn for the performances and the events that I'm doing. Um, Honestly, I would practice, but I just don't really have the time to do that. Um, Practice is definitely something that I feel is important.
Sure.
However, if you don't have time to practice and you can get away with doing what you got to do as a professional musician, and then I feel like I'm probably not the only musician who's like that. Um, but yeah, I just do the best that I can. I carve out time to learn music for whatever events that I'm doing, and I learn that music. And if I'm blessed with time to practice, I will take the time to practice. But it doesn't happen that often.
I hear you. I hear you. No, no, I appreciate that. That makes sense. And I think as a non-musician, listening to I guess being around it, always being around music and learning the music that you're playing for a given event or a given sort of like layout of work, I think inherently that is practice to a degree. Like when I do this and I teach, I'll talk to you about that afterwards. We'll talk a little bit about that after this pod, but folks will ask me, so what do you listen to? But oftentimes I don't listen to podcasts, let alone interview podcasts. I listen to audiobooks. That's not the same. Or I'm listening to sort of these fictionalized things that I have something in my ears, you know what I mean? And I'm around it, but I'm not, checking the papers on what's happening in the podcast world today in this industry. I don't really hear about it in that way. I rather be going on towards the next thing, or just bringing something that is going to make the conversation richer. I don't need to be the best editor. I don't need to be the best podcaster. But what I do need to do is be prepared to interview someone like you that have cogent questions, meaningful questions, and then half-assed questions in the rapid fire portion. So yeah,
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because the connotation of practice definitely has different. Um, it's put into practice differently by different people, and in the music community, practices. It's really more so kind of like you have practice, you have rehearsal, and you have learning. And for me, when I think of practicing, I think of running scales and doing things that are gonna make my technique better, and going over songs that I've already learned so that I can remember them and do them better.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think of when I think of practice. Um, Not to say that, not to go against anything that you said for yourself, but it just made me think about the different connotations of practicing and what that meant for me.
No, no, thank you for that distinction. I make this comparison a lot when I think of sort of the reps, the repetitions of it. Like, when someone does like a physical activity, hitting the gym or what have you, it's like, I'm going to curl the same weight, or maybe I'll get better at it, or I'll be able to do more reps or do it a heavier weight. But the function is sort of the same thing. I'm doing these hammer curls or doing this bench press, but my goal is to get better and improve sort of the technique with it. And I can imagine it gets a little boring at times. So yeah, but so having sort of those new things, it's like, I'm gonna look at this new stuff right here. Let's see who's breaking plates this week. Oh, they breaking glass now? Yo, this is amazing. Man, next week is mugs.
Yeah, I've done some really interesting music. There and maybe you are familiar with this, but there's a piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds by John Cage.
Okay.
So yeah, I could describe it to you,
Please.
but I think it is best experienced when you just listen to it. So I don't want to give it away, but it's popular in the music community. But maybe it's infamous, maybe it's not. I don't know how people view it these days, but yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out 4 minutes and 33 seconds by John Cage. If you're interested in just kind of getting another piece of what new music or avant-garde music is.
I will dive in to that. And this is almost a segue. It's not as good as I was hoping it would be, but it's almost a segue. So when I think of new music, I think of, the way that it's been described, and I'm still building out my understanding of it. But I think of sort of the DIY thing we have here, because you're originally a Baltimorean. You're based in like the DMV, but you're Baltimorean, right?
Yes, I'm from Baltimore.
I was about to side eye you a little bit. I was like, you out here faking the funk? So could you speak on the significance of, being an artist in this region, being a musician in this region? Again, as I, said earlier, I saw you like getting it in DC, like performing like outside plein air style, which was really cool. And, it struck me to take the note and then subsequently reach out. And, I always am curious as to what it's like being a artist, being a creative individual in this region. We're not a Philly, we're not New York, we're not LA, but we have our own sort of specialness here. And you being in that DMV area and being from here, we have a lot of talent in Baltimore, as you know, that we don't usually get that, sort of notoriety for it until we've moved elsewhere. So I just want to hear your thoughts about being a creative in this region.
I really enjoy it. I get a lot of love here in Baltimore. I get a lot of love, and I'll put that I'm DMV based, although clearly I'm from Baltimore. I get so much love from the DMV area, and that's where I'm always in, like the DC, Virginia, the Baltimore. I'm always gigging in these spots. So, although I do claim Baltimore, there's just so much love around the whole DMV that I get as a musician. And I think it's been a really awesome experience getting to be a musician in both Baltimore and DC, because the music styles are different. Especially, going into DC, and you get to be a part of that go-go scene as well. So I've had the opportunity to just be a part of different music scenes and pretty much cater my musical abilities to different types of music and subcultures that exist here in the DMV area.
That's dope. That's dope. And yeah, those distinctions are there. And doing interviews in DC and spending time in DC radio, sort of Howard affiliate, and being a Baltimorean, even though my accent betrays me, I am from here. People don't think it. And noticing those differences, and then I always look for sort of the similarities, and that's why I like to ask that question. And you're at a good spot as a very qualified individual to be able to answer that question. And in that vein of being in, being able to work in this region, I'm curious about this idea. You have this vast range. You have a background in, obviously you said acoustic and electric cello, and blending genres. So speak a bit on the importance of being, and I quote, a musical chameleon.
I love being a musical chameleon because I can't just do one thing. I need to be able to expand in whatever it is I'm doing. Um, I've never been the type of person to just stick to one thing and just do that one thing forever. If I'm gonna do music, I have to do it my way, and my way consists of me being able to really see what the limits are, see what I can get into. And um, I don't limit myself to any genre. There are musicians out here who, feel more comfortable in a particular genre. I don't really care to feel comfortable in a genre. If somebody wants me to play, something that you can do bachata to, or somebody wants me to play some Bollywood or jazz, or I'll figure it out. Like, it's just music at the end of the day. Um, it's like I approach it kind of like I approach cooking. There's a recipe for anything. Find a good recipe, follow the instructions. The meal's going to turn out fine. So, like it's kind of like that with music. I have a very logical and practical approach to everything that I do, everything that I apply myself to, and but I also want to be able to enjoy doing what I'm doing. So that's why it's important for me to be able to expand and figure out how creative I can be with it. What else can I do with it? There's got to be more to it. So that and even on the business side, arranging music, arranging sheet music, and having my own studio where I can record for other artists, and me composing music and stuff like that. It's like, if I'm gonna be a musician, I might as well milk it. So, here I am. Like, I'll just get a piece of everything. Why not?
Now I'm hearing more of that Baltimore flowing out of you. It's like, now I'm figuring it out, man. It's just like cooking, ain't nothing, it's music. All right. No, but you're right, and that's why I had to tilt my head and bring the glasses down. It's my anime look, because I feel the same way in that I I've been told in doing this over 5 years of doing this podcast, man, you should only talk to these types of artists. You should do this. You should do that. I'm like, I do what I want. I talk to who I want to, and I talk to as many people as I want to. And it might go from I'm talking to a super talented musician such as yourself at one moment, and then I'm talking to like a chef later, and I'm going to start referencing like, yeah, so chef, talk about when you cook and how it's like playing the cello. And I'm like, that's what? Oh, really, bro? But I like to look for those sort of unique connections, and it's purely out of like interest and finding sort of the similarities that are there. But at the root of all of it, it's being curious and not getting bored, and being able to, I like the way you said it. It's like, be a musician, I might as well milk it. If I'm going to have people's attention, I might as well get all of the goofy questions out that I can. I mean, there's one before I move into this next question, this next part of this question, where I interviewed a classical music director, and I was just like, yo, so are conductors like Bugs Bunny? And I just really wanted to ask him that, and he had like a smile on his face, and I was like, no one's ever asked you that. He's like, no. He's like, but I have an answer for it. So it's something that's enriching, and it's not the typical conversation. So I was satisfied, and he was also satisfied. And I did ask a question about musician hair as well, because some of the musicians with the fine arts backgrounds, the hair is it's a little crazy, so wild.
Yeah, musicians are very quirky people. I think a lot of times musicians can come off as buttoned up, but well, maybe the violin section is really like that, but
smoke there.
Shout out to my violin ones. But nah, for real though, like musicians we're really quirky, fun people, and we express ourselves through music, and we're very creative people, and although in an orchestra setting you can't really get that sense when everybody is on stage wearing all black and got serious face going on, it's just like, but in real life we're entertainers, so you got to have fun with it.
There's one more side I want to say. I like genre blending, right? And your point around sort of like musicians. There's one guitarist that I really like, Inve Malmstrom, and he plays electric guitar, just shreds on it, and he's playing in front of like the Japan Philharmonic. So they're backing him with his stuff, and I'm like, I've heard this song before, right, in the original version, but with the orchestra and with the drums and the sort of technique, I'm losing my. I work out to that. I'm like, this is amazing. It's like I'm literally working out to classical music that's blended with the sort of Norwegian shred metal. It is a wild, like, and it was a almost like, in a sense, the technique is there, right? But it's almost like high art, low art coming together and intersecting in a way that's just magical. I don't know. I just thought of that a second ago.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's great. You can add that to your playlist of.
Yeah, I would definitely enjoy listening to that. I love all music, so.
Okay. Then I'm just going to be screaming to a beat later. Here's my newest thing on Spotify. It's going to be great. DIY Rob. So I absolutely, I saw this too. I listen to like healing soundscapes. I have insomnia. It comes in different times, but literally when I know that I'm having this sort of period where I can't get the sleep that I'm looking for, working off of like 3 to 4 hours of sleep, if I put on something with those certain BPMs or those certain hertz, I'm able to get rest. And I saw that in your background. Could you talk a bit about sort of the soundscapes? I may have received an email with one in there, but could you tell me a bit about some of the soundscapes and that pursuit?
Yeah. Spirituality is a huge part of my life. And I enjoy being, like I said, if I'm going to do the music thing, I'm going to get into everything. So I enjoy being able to connect music with the parts that I practice spiritually. So like, just being able to create healing frequencies. And it's not with the intentional. I'm not intentional with the healing part. It's really, I think that's just kind of how it comes out. I enjoy creating beautiful things, and for other people, they receive it as healing, and that's why I feel like it's considered a healing soundscape. It's how people receive it, and when I'm creating it, I think it didn't start as me creating like a healing frequency, quote unquote. It's just me wanting to express something really beautiful and in nature. And now I'm more intentional about having it actually be a healing frequency. And the soundscapes, and I enjoy, like, whenever I'm going out on hikes or walks, or I go to different places and things like that, I like to take out my phone and I might record the sounds of bells tolling, or a river, or the cicadas, or birds chirping, or people talking, and I like to take that and throw it in my recordings and make something with it. So not only am I adding in the cello, I'm adding in sounds that I've gotten out from wherever I've been. I have my little singing bowl back here as well. And I take my singing bowl and I'll add that into the recording as well. And I just really enjoy making stuff like that. It's very peaceful, very intentional nowadays. It's very intentional, very peaceful. And I like creating something that makes people feel good. What I sent you in the email, it's not tuned down to a particular hertz at this time. Right now, these are just recordings that I've created, but I may retune them at some point.
Okay, I'm here. Got me right and calm. Before going into this, it was some healing, early healing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if did you have, I don't know if you already listened to it. I wasn't sure if you wanted to share it here or if you just wanted to listen to it on your own time. No pressure. So.
Oh, I listen to it, and I will, always want to get permission from folks who have with their creative work, but I can insert it into the show notes as well if that's cool with you.
I think that's okay.
Okay. And one thing before I move into this last real question, sort of being able to take into account the environment. I love what you were saying of I might, on a hike and get a sound or the birds chirping or the cicadas. We don't like the cicadas, but the cicadas for sake of argument.
One. I have a really good one with cicadas in it.
I feel like you're trolling a little bit. I feel like
I almost sent you the one with the cicadas in it, actually.
they're the bane of my existence. But I think of interviews, especially some of the old interviews recirculating from Timberland, the producer, and he would talk about just where did this effect come from? Like, what is it? Are You That Somebody has like a baby cooing in it, the Aaliyah song, and it's just like this is not a sound you would expect in there. But it's a weird sound. It still sticks out 20 plus years later, but it's something that's unique and it's something that is almost a signature in a lot of his production, which sets it aside in that crowded sort of production market. And no one's really like aped that style since. And it's something about being able to grab and take from the environment that you're in and apply that to, one's creative work. So I do that when I lift questions or make observations when I travel. It might be just something as simple as looking at a bumper sticker or making it a point to walk wherever I go. Go to any, sort of different community and I'm just taking a walk, got the notepad on me and I'm jotting down like sort of observations. How do they do stuff here? If I see some street art, I'm going to get inspiration from that. And it eventually finds itself into questions, into insights. So here's the last real question. I've seen you been heating up the social media, with this sort of recent feature on HBO Max and Magnolia Network's Second Chance Stage. Could you describe that experience? And as it is often with television, something that took place a little while ago before the public gets to see it. So could you, take us back a little bit?
Yeah, Second Chance Stage. I got an inquiry about the show in late February. I believe there was an assistant producer who had found me on TikTok or something like that, TikTok or Instagram, and they felt that I might be a good fit for the show. And so we talked, and they were just like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you on the show. So let's get started." And everything was a whirlwind process because filming started just a few weeks later. So they got me in just before the deadline, to be a part of the show. And I'm really glad that the opportunity was presented to me because I never would have thought something like that would happen. Somebody be like, see me on social media and be like, "Hey, I need to see you on this show." So that was a very interesting experience. And being a part of the show was really interesting. It was fun. It was exciting. It was absolutely insane. Being in the world of TV production is some next level stuff. Okay. And I was just like, oh, so this is what it's like. But it was, like I said, it was kind of like one of those once in a lifetime experiences, for somebody to reach out to you to be a part of something like that. And on HBO Max, of all places, I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to showcase my talent on such a platform and with such amazing people. I met so many amazing people on that journey to be on the show. And it was interesting just kind of getting to the whole performance part of it. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to check out my performance on the show, but I performed Hiss by Meg Thee Stallion.
Nice.
And the producers actually told me that like she personally approved and allowed me to play the song on the show. However, there was some challenges to getting to me actually performing a song on the show because of the way in which I perform. I use like backing tracks and then I create over that backing track.
Sure.
And so we had to get a song cleared. The first 2-3 songs that I had put out were not cleared, and it takes time for a song to get cleared. So we didn't get this song cleared until about 4 days before I actually had to go on stage and perform.
Oh, wow.
So once the song got cleared, and mind you, I was already practicing another song to perform, but that song didn't get cleared. Once this song got cleared, I immediately had to come up with an entirely new set. I wrote this song in a day, and then I had 3 days to memorize it and perform it in front of a live studio audience and celebrity judges. So I was stressed to write a song in a day and then only have time to practice and memorize that song that you just wrote, like within days, and then to perform it live was just, I was just like my brain was just all over the place, and I was just doing the best that I could. And the only time I had to practice was like at midnight. So I was just like, and the thing about practice is you have to get sleep so that your brain can make those neural connections so that you'll remember it the next day. And if I knew I had to get sleep, because I knew if I was practicing this song and then I did not get sleep, I would not remember it anymore the next day. So it was important for me to make sure that I was getting sleep so that I could remember, and I could make those neural connections, and I will be able to have the song more memorized the next day. And yeah, so this is just over a span of just a few days, and then then I'm going to go perform the song. So it was a very interesting experience being on the show, and it taught me a lot about just kind of where I want to be as a musician, and it just kind of opened my eyes to what I can do and where I can take this.
Thank you. Thank you for taking us back. That's great. I have it queued up actually on HBO Max. I'm playing catch up right now on a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. I love being able to get the sort of behind the scene context, and then sort of like it's going to enrich watching the performance. I will send you some notes afterwards, like, yo, so this is wild. What were you thinking in this moment? It's almost like a whole nother podcast to come, just specifically on the performance. But yeah, so I want to rock a few rapid fire questions with you before we wrap up here in these final moments. So if you're cool with those, I got 4 of them for you.
Sure thing.
Like I told everyone, you don't want to overthink these.
Okay.
Like whatever the first thing that pops in your mind is.
Whew. I'll try to filter myself.
What is you've made some travel in the last year, I would imagine. What place is your favorite places you've traveled this year?
This year? Probably Kansas City. Yeah. I really enjoy being in Kansas City. I enjoyed the city. It was different from where I'm from. And, the people were cool. I had a great experience when I was there. I got to be there with my parents because I traveled there for the show. So I would say, yeah, my favorite place that I've traveled this year would definitely be Kansas City.
Nice. This is going to be an odd one, but I think you got an answer for it, as you touched on musicians or quirky people. What do you think about when you perform?
That's a good question.
Don't mess up.
I want to say I don't really think. I just feel. Yeah. Unless if I'm in a stressful situation, sometimes I'll have to think about, okay, so I recently did this gig and I was performing at this holiday party, about 600, 700 people. And I'm standing on a rather small stage. And I'm standing there, I'm in heels and I'm playing my electric cello and I'm moving to the music. And there's a moment where I lose balance and I lean on my speaker because I was about to I might have fell off that little platform they had me on.
Tenuous.
And so in that moment, I was just like, Chanel, you just don't have to play it off. You just got to laugh it off. As terrifying as it was to almost fall off the stage, because it was just crazy. I would say usually I'm not thinking when I play music. Usually I'm feeling, but in the moments where I'm thinking, it's something has just happened and I need to remind myself to get back on track. Never allow your audience to see you sweat ever.
1000%. That's a gem right there too. I had to learn this in some sort of it was a class in high school and it stuck with me. I used to really get bent out of shape if I like flub something. And I'm like, they don't know. They don't know I made a mistake. Are they sitting there literally reading the script that I wrote poorly and saying, Rob, you didn't say that line. It's like, all right, cool. So just, front it. I just front it, but also stages. I've been on a few stages. I don't want to become a viral moment. Like, yo, we got this TikTok of this giant bald black man falling off a stage and have that.
Yeah, and I actually used the moment to my advantage because every time I thought about almost falling, because it made me like laugh every time I thought about it. So every time I thought about it, I smiled just a little bit more on stage, which is great stage presence. The audience wants to see me smile, of course. So I used it to my advantage. I was like, if I felt like I wasn't smiling enough, then I would just think about when I almost fell off stage, and then I'd be like, that's crazy.
Like, yo, remember that time you almost trapdoored yourself? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do actually.
So sometimes you just got to trick yourself into giving a better performance.
Love it. So here's the last two. Here's the first of the last two, I guess. When you mentioned a few folks that helped you along the way in terms of individual personalized sort of coaching, do you have a hero in music? It doesn't have to be specifically of cello, but in music overall, that it may not be their music per se, but it may be how they carried themselves, sort of what their contribution was to canon. But is there a hero or a couple of heroes that come to mind when it comes to music and performance?
Yeah, absolutely. Apocalyptica and Zoe Keating are the artists that come to mind when I think of musical heroes. So Apocalyptica, I'm not sure if you've heard of them before, but they're like this Finnish metal cello band. So like it's cellists playing metal music.
Nice.
And I listened to a lot of rock and metal growing up. I listened to a lot of everything. But I also really enjoyed and appreciated a lot of rock and a lot of metal. And I found Apocalyptica somehow. And listening to these four cellos do like, Enter Sandman, just playing music by Nirvana and other amazing groups and bands, and like hearing that on cello, I was like, yo, this is so sick. Like hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit and Enter Sandman and Fade to the Black were some of my favorite ones. And I was like, oh, I could do some other stuff on cello. Like I started listening to this stuff probably in my preteen years, I think, maybe around the age of 13 or 14 or something like that. And then listening to cellos do rock music. First of all, I feel like cello was built for that. Like, I feel like cello is built for playing rock and heavy metal. And every chance I need to do more content where I'm doing rock and heavy metal, because I could do that all day on cello. It's so spicy. I love it. Mm-hmm. I started doing it myself. I would like play along with it sometimes, and it was just so much fun. And I think it just kind of opened my mind up to being able to do other things on cello that were not classical music. But also Zoe Keating, she's a lute-based cellist and composer. Mm-hmm. And hearing her create music on her cello using a loop pedal and, using her laptop and whatever DAW she was using on her laptop. It was really amazing seeing her create using loops and creating entire soundscapes and entire pieces. And I was just like, yo, that is so amazing. I saw Zoe Keating doing what she was doing on loop pedals, and I was like, I need to get me a loop pedal. So sometimes I do loop-based performances. Actually, a lot of the music that I create is, even though I may not use a loop pedal to do it, it's loop-based in nature, because that's my favorite way to create music, is by using loops.
That's great. Thank you. You got one more, and this one goes into sort of we had a little social media thing about a certain dish. So I'm curious about your food preferences.
Oh.
What is, let's say you have one of those things, you have some travel coming up for a big show, and what is a meal that comes to mind that, you traveled somewhere, you had a really good meal. What was the meal? What comes to mind? Name the city and the meal, if you will.
Hmm. Traveled somewhere and I had a good meal. LA, Roscoe's.
Great.
Yeah. When I went to Roscoe's and I had the chicken, and I think I had the chicken and waffles and some mac and cheese. Or, was it chicken and waffles? I think it was. Yeah, the chicken tastes different over in California. I don't know. I think it's because they be in the sun or something like that. The chicken tastes different. Over here we got some good chicken, but it's like, everything is like it's like, we got Popeyes, we got Rofo, we got Louisiana. That's not the one I meant, KFC and all that. But
Yeah.
I ain't never been to a Roscoe's,
Yeah.
and I was just like, this. It just hit different. So I really enjoyed the food that I had from Roscoe's when I was in LA. That was lovely.
That's a wonderful answer. I love Roscoe's as well. Yeah, I was out there probably 6 years ago for a wrestling show, and
Nice.
like, yo, I need to get all of the food possible while we're here, and I'm not going to eat any food at the wrestling shows because I can't be a big dude with two hot dogs. Just this thing, it looks wild. It looks like a stereotype. So, I was
That's
just like,
exactly it. So.
so yeah, hitting the Roscoe's up, and just even I think one of the other things I had out there out west was what is the In-N-Out burger? I had that as well, animal style. Had to get loose with it. Yeah. So yeah, Cali is pretty dope.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it for the podcast. So there are two things I want to do as we close out here. One, I want to thank you for spending some time with me. We went on for like an hour, so thank you for that. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners where they can follow you, check you out, website, social media, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time and your energy. I enjoyed this interview. And you can find me everywhere as TrapCellist. It is all one word, spelled TrapCellist. There is no H in cello. You can find me everywhere as TrapCellist. I have a website. You can go to TrapCellist.com. On Instagram at TrapCellist, everywhere. If you type in TrapCellist, I'm gonna pop up.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank the trap cellist, Chanel Kelly, for coming onto the podcast and sharing a bit of her story and some of her insights. And for Chanel Kelly, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.